Hey everybody, it's Albert. A little while back I was watching a program on the History Channel. I generally don't watch that a whole lot. It's the quality of the programming that channel's going down in the last few years. But occasionally, sandwiched between the various programs on supposed visits by ancient astronauts and the Loch Ness Monster and UFOs and the world ending in 2012 and predictions by Nostradamus. So they still, once in a while, have programs on real history. And amidst one of those, now granted, this program, even though it was on real history, they gave it a title that made it sound like all their other programs. It was titled The Aegean Apocalypse, which sort of fits in with the general end of the world theme that seems to be the predominant interest of the History Channel these days. But it was a very fascinating program, and if you get a chance to see it, I definitely recommended it. And I've in fact checked some of this, and I knew some of it earlier, but in things I didn't know I checked, and it seems to be, they've given a pretty good picture of it. And what it talks about is the end of the Bronze Age, and this is about 1200 BC or so. And at the end of the Bronze Age, this remarkable thing happened, something you never see happen in the Middle East these days. Peace. Yes, genuine peace. And it wasn't because the entire region got conquered by one group, like the Romans or something like that, but genuine peace between competing superpowers of the region. It just seems so bizarre and out of place for mankind, but it actually happened. The three reigning superpowers of the region were of that whole region, the Mediterranean, were Egypt, the Hittites, and in Greece, the Mycenaeans. And the Hittites, particularly the Hittites and the Egyptians, were mortal enemies for a long time. And basically, they all arranged peace. Particularly the Hittites and the Egyptians were the main. I mean, the Mycenaeans are across the Mediterranean. It's not as much of a threat, but between the Hittites and Egypt, they basically signed a peace treaty and kept it. Really. So they did. They actually kept the peace treaty. And this went on for quite a while, a couple of generations at least. And pretty much at that point, you almost had kind of a Bronze Age utopia going on. I mean, there was lots of trade. There was, and from what archaeologists have found, people seem to be living a good life. You didn't have to worry about, suddenly armies coming in and slaughtering your family or anything, which had been a definite threat prior to that time. Everything just seemed great. This was as close as I guess you could get to a Bronze Age utopia. I mean, granted, it's still, a more primitive civilization than we're used to, and granted, there's a lot of inequality. It's much better to be on the top than on the bottom, but of course that's true now. It's just that, with technology and all, the bottom's been raised quite a bit, but still, it's better to be on top. But overall, as far as living in a non-technological civilization, it wasn't half bad. There were farming and all sorts of nice things going on, and then an amazing thing happened. Everything just crashed completely. Suddenly, all of these and at that point there were also smaller kingdoms. I don't want it sound like these were the only groups. There were smaller kingdoms, but generally they were allied with one of the big powers but suddenly it all came tumbling down, and it's a mystery exactly what happened. All you know is that one by one, these civilizations got wiped out by these invading hordes. And the only thing we know is from the one that survived. Egypt managed to hang on, although it was tough, and they were pushed back to the south for a while, but managed to recapture. And Egypt referred to this group as the Sea People. No one knows, and the thing, this is the interesting thing, it's not like you saw this coming, like they just suddenly show up out of nowhere. They don't seem to be coming from anywhere, they don't seem to be going anywhere, no one knows exactly who they are, where they came from, what was going on, and they just suddenly just tore down this and the whole civilization went crashing. And it was and you went into what they call the ancient dark age, until after that you had the rebuilding of civilization, and basically people looking back on the grand golden age, and that's where a lot of the things like the Homeric myths and that sort of thing, it's like looking back on this golden age. But what exactly happened? No one knows. Who were the sea people? What were they? And there doesn't seem to be any clear picture. But what was interesting is they have a theory. You can't really prove it, but what they notice is that the Egyptians' pictures of these people look a lot like soldiers from that region. And the theory goes that basically what happened is you suddenly had a lot of warriors who, because of peace, were, well, unemployed, didn't have a living. So they invented one, started out as piracy, went into bands basically pirating, and then, you look at these kingdoms that are rich and powerful, and you are basically their army. And because that's one of the things they couldn't figure out is, why weren't these kingdoms able to defend themselves? And the answer is, maybe that was your army attacking you. Because they had cut the military because they didn't really need these large armies when they're not fighting any more wars. And I think there's an interesting lesson here that one of the dangers of extreme militarization is that, well, sometimes the tail can wag the dog. Just something to think about. Thank you very much for your time.